Today we're looking at the 5 hardest gym leaders in Pokemon, starting with Fantina. Specifically her Platinum appearance, where she swaps from being the 5th gym leader to the 3rd. Making her an earlier challenge makes her already dominant Ghost-type team even more difficult. You see, you don't really have any solid counters early on. I mean, sure, you can catch some Pokemon that learn Dark-type moves such as Gyarados and Golbat, but her team will rip right through them. And the other Pokemon you could catch before challenging Fantina are Ghost-types in Eternative Forest, making her really difficult to overcome like the other 2 gym leaders. There is an NPC that gives you an Eevee and Hearthstone that you could technically evolve into an Umbreon and have a much easier time with this gym leader, but having to force an evolution just to overcome a gym leader really just adds to the notion that she's too damn difficult. Now, looking at her actual Pokemon team, she leads with a Duskull whose defensive stats make it a pain, but it also has the move Will-O-Wisp, which effectively takes out any of your Pokemon with physically damaging moves. Her Shadow Sneak gives her priority, and her Future Sight typically forces you to switch out, which then she can counter with the move Pursuit. And if you didn't already know, Pursuit's damage is doubled if the target is attempting to switch out that turn, making Duskull an extremely oppressive lead for only being the 3rd gym battle. Her second Pokemon is a Haunter, which is probably her weakest Pokemon on the team, and that's telling. Haunter itself is an absurdly strong 2nd stage Pokemon with a high special attack and speed stat, but what makes this Haunter, Fantina's, weakest link is the fact that it only knows physically damaging moves. However, that's not to say it can't still give you a difficult time. With status afflicting moves such as Hypnosis and Confuse Ray, her Haunter can slowly chip away at your Pokemon, making them easily susceptible to her ace, Mismagius. This thing is an absolute unit. I don't care how seasoned of a player you are, going up against a Mismagius for the first or even the second time for that matter always felt like an insane challenge. Its special stats and speed are over 100, and it gets 3 damaging moves of different types. Psybeam, which also has the chance to confuse your Pokemon, Magical Leaf, which always hits no matter what, and her stab move Shadow Ball, which you better believe hits like a truck. She's also got Confuse Ray to really put you into a terrifying corner, and just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, yeah, it's got a Citrus Berry. Yup, Fantina isn't playing around anymore. Her arsenal of Ghost types, which are already immune to normal type attacks, are also immune to ground type attacks, with each of her Pokemon having the ability Levitate. I mean, a full team of 2 immunities, and only at the 3rd gym? Yeah, Fantina, you're definitely securing a spot on this list. Next up is one of my personally challenging gym battles, and that's against Winona. Now, which version of Winona is kind of hard to answer because both her Ruby Sapphire and Emerald counterparts are challenging, but for the number 4 spot on this list, we'll be going with her Ruby and Sapphire team, and the main reason is because it's got a Swellow on it. Swellow's already got ridiculously high speed stats, which will almost always let it go first, and it's got access to the move Double Team. You see where I'm going with this? Winona can quite literally spam the move Double Team, then hit you with her never missing stab, Aerial Ace, for some decent damage. Oh, and if you land a status affliction on her Swellow, yeah, that just doubles its damage since it's got the ability Guts. But that doesn't even begin to scratch the surface of how her team is so incredibly stacked as a gym leader. You see, as a flying type specialist, Winona has 3 weaknesses: Rock, Ice, and the dreaded Electric types. But she is quite possibly the only gym leader in existence to have a Pokemon on her team that can counter each of her major weaknesses. I mean, let's just look at it. Pelipper handles Rock types with ease, and her Skarmory can slice through any Ice types. And her ace Altaria is a complete monster in its own right. With its access to Earthquake, allowing it to one-shot many Electric types, it also gets the move Dragon Dance, which increases its attack and speed every time it's used. And all she really needs to do is just use it a couple times, and her Altaria is single-handedly sweeping your entire team before you can even say Flying Nimbus. But now we gotta talk about the elephant in the room.
But wait, that's a cow.
Whitney is notorious for being known as one of the hardest gym leaders in all of Pokemon, and there's a good reason for it. She's a normal type gym leader with only 1 weakness, fighting types, and the only fighting type you can catch before challenging her is a Heracross, and good luck headbutting 1,000 trees to come across one. Or you could technically trade a man in the department store a Drowsy for a Machop, but even that's not enough. You see, she's got a Clefairy with Cute Charm that can leave your Pokemon infatuated, but it's also got the move Double Slap and Mimic for some solid damage each turn. But on top of that, it's got the move Encore to trap you into using the same move for 3 turns. And if that wasn't bad enough, she's got a wild card move known as Metronome, which could end up being a Splash or a Hyper Beam. There really is no rhyme or reason to this, and that's all just at the 3rd gym. But her ace Miltank is what gave many of us nightmares as a kid. This Pokemon has a base 100 speed stat, solid defense, and a pretty strong attack stat sitting at 80. But on top of all that, it has the ability Scrappy, which allows it to hit Ghost types with normal type moves. So if you thought you could just immunity hack it, think again. Oh, and it's also got a Lumberry, so no use trying to give it a status affliction. And it's got the move Milk Drink, which restores 50% of Miltank's maximum health. Yeah, this thing is just never going down. And just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, it has Attract to infatuate you, Stomp to flinch you, and rollout that only gets stronger after each successful hit that lands, often leading to full team wipes from a single pink devil cow. Next up is the gym leader you probably forgot about, and that's Elesa from Pokemon Black and White. She's only the 4th gym leader, and she specializes in electric type Pokemon, and we all know electric types only have one weakness, ground types. Seems pretty straightforward, except for the fact that she leads with an Emolga, an electric flying type, which is immune to ground type moves, giving it virtually no weaknesses, and it gets access to a move that deals damage and switches it out to another team member. Who does Elesa switch in? Oh, just another Emolga. Yeah, she's got 2 flying squirrels with no weaknesses, a move that switches them out, speed priority with quick attack, a move that never misses with aerial ace, and if that wasn't enough, she's also got pursuit, just in case you thought about running away. And her ace, Zebstrika, is probably one of the fastest Pokemon you'll be going up against at this point in the game, and it's got a move that makes it even faster, Flame Charge. That and its whopping 100 base attack stat, this Zebra is gonna ram you like a truck. This combination and being the only gym leader to effectively get rid of her major type weakness on not 1 but 2 of her Pokemon is the reason why she's got the number 2 spot on our list. And now for the hardest gym leader you'd ever have to face. Meet Sabrina. Specifically, Sabrina from the original Red and Blue versions. You probably already know this, but in the original Pokemon games, the Psychic type was notoriously overpowered for several reasons, leading to a huge imbalance that made Psychic types, Sabrina's specialty, particularly dominant. To start off, there was a huge lack of effective counters, with Bug types being their only weakness in the absence of Dark types in Gen 1. Bug types weren't much of a weakness at all, with the lack of strong moves and most Bug types having really poor stats. Psychic types continued to go unchecked and reign supreme. But even Ghost type moves were supposed to counter Psychic types, but due to a coding error, Psychic moves were actually more effective against Ghost types. Plus the fact that the only Ghost line we got in Gen 1 was also part Poison, which is weak to Psychic, so yeah, Psychic typing was pretty OP in Gen 1. But that's not even the biggest reason why Sabrina finds herself at the number 1 spot on our list. Oh no, it's also because of the faulty game mechanics in Gen 1. You see, the game mechanics in Gen 1 were far less refined compared to later games. For instance, the special stat was a single value that encompassed both the special attack and special defense, and Psychic types typically had already high special stats. This made them both excellent attackers on the special side as well as great defenders against other special attacks. Now that we quickly went over why Psychic types were so OP in Gen 1, let's take a look at her actual team. She starts off with a Kadabra, who by itself is no problem. I mean, its defenses are abysmal, but its speed and special attack are kinda out of this world for a second stage Pokemon. Oh, and it also has Disable and Recover, which turns it into a self-sustaining nuisance that shoots lasers out of its spoons. Her second Pokemon is her Mr. Mime, which for a lot of players was the first time they would ever encounter this Pokemon, unless they traveled back to Route 2 and traded an Abra for their own. And this thing's stats are no joke. With 100 special attack, 120 special defense, and 90 speed, it's doing just as much damage as it can take. But that's not even the worst part. Oh no. It's got Barrier and Light Screen to further bolster its defenses. Luckily, its only real damaging move is Confusion. However, with the added 10% chance of confusing your Pokemon, this Mr. Mime was often the wall you just couldn't get over. Then she has a Venomoth, which can we just say is really silly? Like, why does she have a Venomoth and Koka doesn't? Some of these gym leaders just make absolutely no sense sometimes. Whatever the case, she's got one on her team, and while it isn't as bulky as her Psychic types, it does have an array of status afflicting moves such as Poison Powder to poison you, Stun Sport to paralyze you, and Psybeam to confuse you, and just for giggles, Leech Life as a self-sustaining move. I mean, even her weakest link on her team is built to be tough. Then lastly, if you ever manage to make it this far, her Alakazam with its 135 special attack and 120 speed is most definitely going to send you packing. With its Psy Wave move that deals a random amount of damage varying from 1 damage to 1.5 times the user's level, so in this case 64, it could potentially two-shot many of your Pokemon. Oh, and that's not all. The inclusion of Recover and its already incredible speed makes it guaranteed to stay on the field for as long as it wants, with no real counters to it in the Generation 1 Pokemon games. So really, when you think about a gym leader that was way more difficult than they ever needed to be, there's nothing quite like Gen 1's Sabrina.